Hello, this is Trent Chapman with Short Sale Genius. How many times have you done a transaction where the second lien is asking for way too much money and the first lien will never give in? This is a very common occurrence if you're dealing with two liens with two different lenders. Actually, some agents completely avoid short sales if they have two liens. They're like, no, that's the worst transaction ever. I don't want to deal with it at a bank. If there's two different lenders, I don't want to deal with it. Now, there is an easy way to do this. Now, I should reword that. An easier way to do this. It's not ever simple to do a short sale with two liens, but it can be made easier. So here's what we do in our office. When we're negotiating a short sale, before we even submit the offer to the bank, we know the second lender is going to ask for more than $3,000. So we're going to start off asking for at least 20% of the second lender's unpaid principal balance. So let's say I've got a $300,000 first lien and a $100,000 second lien. That $100,000 second lien, I'm going to tell the first lender that they want $20,000. Now, does that mean I'm going to have to give them $20,000 or they're going to ask for that? Maybe not. But I'm going to start out with a higher number rather than a lower number and explain to them, I've already talked to the second lender and this bank has said that they will not entertain a short sale unless we can get them 20% of their unpaid principal balance. Now, when we do this, we've got to be very clear with this first lender that we've already talked to the second, this is what they're asking for. Now, when we go to the submission for the second lender, a lot of times they won't even look at your submission until you have a tentative approval or an offer from the first lender. So we will portray that from the first lender they're offering the standard $3,000. Of course, most second lenders are going to counter. We want to start this process as soon as we can. That way we're not waiting until we get approval from the first and then having a month or two to wait for the second to finally come through with their approval. We want to try and match those up as close to possible so we can cut down on the negotiation time frame. So when you're dealing with two liens, always tell the first lender, I'm going to give them a little extra money and for the second, and always tell the second lender, I'm sorry, but the first lender is only allowing you to have $3,000. Otherwise, they said they'll let it foreclose. It's a guideline. So that's the strategy number one to start out the negotiations. Now, this often is not the only strategy you have to implement. This is just a starting point. That's a good strategy to start the negotiations earlier rather than later, but it's not all you have to do. You're still going to have to fight back and forth between the first and second lender to get them to agree to a number that works for both of them. Now, with the second lender, most of the time they'll take 10% of their unpaid principal balance and be happy with it. Now, there are cases where if the seller wants a release of liability, the second lender may ask for up to 20 or 30% of their unpaid principal balances on those loans. But unfortunately, there are some lenders who ask for even more than that. So dealing with the average second lender, 10% of their unpaid principal balance is what they'll ask for in order to do a short sale and release the lien. Now, some will release the liability with 10%, some release it with 20% of their unpaid principal balance. But that's just so you know what to look for when you're negotiating with the second lien. Now, with the first lien, many people think that the first lien guideline is a guideline, you can't overcome the guideline. If the first tells you our guideline is we can only allow $3,000 to the second lien, oftentimes you'll get them to give more money to that second lien. Now, again, each scenario is different. So if a second lien is for a $300,000 balance and the first is a $200,000 balance, to where it's kind of flip-flopped, and that second is a larger loan than the first lien, oftentimes they're going to ask for more money than what the first is willing to give. But for the most cases where you have an 80-20 split or a 70-30 split as far as the first lien balance and the second lien balance, you will be able to get them to negotiate to an agreement. Now, here's where we start using a little bit more of our strategy to negotiate. When you're dealing with the first lien and you're trying to get them to give the second lien more money, you have to convey to them the reason why they should do this. Now, obviously, most banks understand that by foreclosing, they lose more money than if they just do a short sale. But unfortunately, if you don't know their numbers, it's hard for you to know how low they're willing to go, how much money they're willing to give to closing costs, commissions, and to the second lien. Now, we use a calculation that has come from different banks, namely Bank of America, Wells, and also Wachovia, IndyMac, and Chase. We've got a copy of their loan or short sale and foreclosure calculations to determine which of those options is the best option for the bank based on the fair market value and the offer that's on the table for a short sale. So with that information, we're able to make a better determination on, okay, should I go to the first lender and ask them to give up more money the second? Because with the short sale, they'll net $280, and in foreclosure, based on the fair market value, they'll net $250. I know that there's $30,000 in extra money there that is a better return for them to do a short sale. Even if they give up $10,000 or $15,000 more, they would still make more money than foreclosing. So once you know these numbers, now you have more power to negotiate. Now you can go to the first lender and say, look, I understand that this is a loss and you're not making money on a short sale. However, I also know you'll lose more money if we can't come to an agreement with the second lender. The second lender is asking for $10,000, which is 10% of their unpaid principal balance. You're only offering $3,000. If we can get the additional $7,000, this transaction will close, And based on these numbers, you will net $15,000 more than a foreclosure by allowing that second lender to have the additional $7,000 they're requesting. Now, again, this may not work the first time you go to a negotiator, because most negotiators you deal with don't have the power to say yes. All they can say is, no, here's our guidelines. That's why it's imperative that you understand. Also, the second technique which we train people on is how to get to someone of higher authority from the bank so that you can get a settlement agreement that's beneficial for the bank, even though it's outside of their guidelines. Because most bank employees are stuck within the guidelines. They don't have the power to say yes, even if it makes more sense for the bank and it reduces their ultimate loss on that file. So that's another important thing to understand. Now, what if the second lender is just asking for 30 or 40% of their unpaid principal balance, but there's really no reason to give them that much money? If they have no recourse against the client, or even if they do have recourse options, meaning if the first forecloses, the second can sue the seller or the borrower for the deficiency balance, then in those cases they might say, okay, we'll release the lien and liability for 30 or 40%. Now, if the client doesn't have assets, it doesn't make sense to give into those terms, because they understand that the bank probably won't come after them unless they show income or assets in the next few years. Now, each state is different. There is a statute of limitations upon which the bank can come after and sue a client after a short sale or foreclosure if there was not a release of liability or if state law does not prohibit it. So understand your state laws, understand what protection there is for your client, and then when you negotiate with the bank, you'll know what they can ask for and what they shouldn't be asking for, and how to push back and negotiate with them. But for the most part, as a rule of thumb, 10 to 20% of the unpaid principal balance is the most you'll end up giving to a second lien in a short sale transaction. Now, for more information on any other common questions that we get about how to negotiate short sales, you can go ahead and click on the next down below and go to the next video in the series.